smaller percentage of women than of men like the president's personality, and a larger percentage of women than men actively dislike it. Only other striking difference between the sexes is the plurality of women who don't know or are frank enough to admit they don't know anything about New Deal policies. And so it's saying either the women don't know or they're just more frank and willing to admit that they don't know than the men know. Hello and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, then welcome. I would love to earn your subscription today. We are going through something we have never done before, to my knowledge, I think, on this channel. We're going through a Life magazine, which we have done before, but we have never done one from the 1930s. The one we are looking at today is from 1938. It is Life magazine with FDR on the cover. It says Franklin Roosevelt and His America from June 27th, 1938. Crazy, isn't it? 10 cents. We've talked about the 45-cent ones before, which still feels crazy, but this one I found recently, semi-recently. And as we were reading through our book, The Kennedy Men, 3 Generations of Sex, Scandal, and Secrets, we came across Joe Kennedy's interactions with FDR. And I just thought, you know what? I think I have a magazine about that. I do have a whole stack that's, probably ridiculous by some standards, but by sharing them here, it makes it not ridiculous. Instead, I have a cool stack of magazines that I get to share with you all. So let's go ahead and dig in. My goal for this is to get a picture of what America was like, what FDR's America was like, and how the country viewed FDR. And I did take a peek at this one last night. I didn't read any of the stories, but I just wanted to get an overview of, is it just a little bit? Is it, a feature story? And actually there's like multiple stories. There are pages and pages of data. And so we're just gonna have fun kind of skipping through this magazine that is, let me do my math, like 13 years shy of 100 years old. So that would be 87 years old. 87 years old, guys. It's very cool. So there's these pictures of old cars and what looks like Yosemite up there at the top. Yep, it says 26 stock cars recently left LA for Yosemite National Park, 314.5 miles away. And it talks about extracting every mile out of every gallon of gas. So very, very cool old ads. I wish I could just sit here and read all of them to you, but I will read various bits of the magazine to help us all get a flavor of what America was like. So I see women's lives made easier every month with a Tampax ad, which is interesting to me. I didn't think those kinds of things were publicly talked about at that time. So they are. And I also see a headline in the letters to the editor that talks about colored youth. And it talks about the man writing the article says, I am a Negro, 21 years old. And he's talking. So even just those kinds of use of words and language and him owning it himself, that he's calling himself that, very interesting. There are signs from all across America that say things like George Washington stopped here at least 25 times between 1789 and 1798. That's Spurrier's Tavern. And then different signs. Jesus is coming soon. Gunther's Beer. Up here it says make childbirth safer. Pennsylvania roadside sign. So it's just giving us a look at what America was like. The very first article is about this. It says, June 27th, 1938, do you approve in general of FDR? And it has a little chart for us. So it shows this line, which is really an interesting way of presenting data, I think. It says factory laborers support him the most at 78.7%. Other laborers, 75.4%. Housekeepers, 63.7%. White collar workers, 59.4%. Professionals, 46.4%. Students, and it shows them actually in uniform. So maybe implying, maybe that's why they're not so supportive, because they fear going to war. 39.4%. And then executives are down here with 65.3% not supporting, but only 34% supporting. So it says Fortune poll shows that America is for Roosevelt in spite of the New Deal. The most significant and exciting political fact of the year is revealed in a poll of public opinion by Life's sister magazine, Fortune, published June 23rd. It is something which, intimate observers report, President Roosevelt has stubbornly refused to believe possible. It's something about which political writers have been hinting at and speculating about for months. Now comes Fortune with positive proof that although an overwhelming majority of the American people admire FDR, his personality, and a smaller majority support him generally, the majority of U.S. citizens do not actively approve of the New Deal. So that's interesting. And that part is italicized. So it is for sure the focus of this little feature at the bottom. So it's saying that in the Fortune interviews that were given to these people who were polled, they like Roosevelt, but they don't like his New Deal policies. It says America likes Franklin Roosevelt and his rearmament and foreign policies. It dislikes or is on the fence about his advisors and New Deal. So it's interesting. It actually has point by point charts. You know, you think about now the modern podcast and how you have people that are weighing in about this issue or that issue, and there are pollsters who are providing real-time looks, week by week sometimes, at the changes in support for one candidate or another, or one policy or another. But at this time, you had the radio and you had print media. And this was like the podcast. It has graphs about people's support for rearmament, foreign policy. He only gets 50% support for foreign policy, 63% for his rearmament policies. Well, it's all sub 50% support on his New Deal policies, from wages, economics, unions, business, methods, and reorganization. So very interesting. There's a whole page here about Negroes like Roosevelt and the New Deal the most. So that's interesting, because a lot of people point to the 1960s and LBJ's Civil Rights Act as the point where the Black community really swung to Democrats. But this page here is saying that actually the Black population in America liked him the most and liked his policies the most. It gives some stories. It shows various men at work and at home being polled, sharecroppers, an odd job man, reliever who is a cripple, and another man who's out working. It shows these men. Then poor white people like him just about as well. So it shows the poor, and their support is all upwards of 61%, except for his reorganization bill. That only gets 51%, but his attitude towards unions, business, economic objectives, personality, his advisors, they support him wholeheartedly. I will show you this cute, look at her. She is a dress model. I just think some of these things are so quaint and so different. You see these men gathering around in what looks like a store, a little local store. One of the things I've seen recently was talking about informal places where people could gather and how those places are shutting down, that churches have less attendance, how there are less local bars, which was just like a place where people could kind of go, have a drink, chill out after work, that is going the way of the dodo bird, and that instead we have more like a modern upscale place that requires you to keep purchasing a lot of things in order to stay, like a coffee bar, or there are cigar bars or things like that. But that even in those places, it's not like the 33 men who all live nearby all go to that place. It's more like friends meet up there and then disperse, and how there's not really places for you to informally gather with people who live near you and just connect and talk about things. Anyway, upper class, middle class, it tells us about them. It says, conclusion, however, is that Roosevelt is still the master of American politics, and it shows that he has overwhelming support in all of those white states And the blackened states there are at 51%, which is still not bad. Not bad support. So that's 1938. It says his personality charms more men than women. Women now hold title to some 70% of America's wealth, exert a vast, though unmeasured influence in American politics. A favorite grouse of Roosevelt-hating men has been that much of his power is due to the spell which the spectacular charm of his handsome face, warm smile, and beautiful voice casts over female voters. It is enlightening to discover in the Fortune poll that although the difference is only 2.8 in one case, and 1% in the other, a smaller percentage of women than of men like the president's personality, and a larger percentage of women than men actively dislike it. Only other striking difference between the sexes is the plurality of women who don't know or are frank enough to admit they don't know anything about New Deal policies. So it's saying either the women don't know or they're just more frank and willing to admit that they don't know than the men know. That's very interesting. So I'm skipping through now this article that I'm just going to point out. It's so fantastic. I love a road trip. I don't know, we've never really talked about that on this channel, but I love travel. And this whole article here in the middle is like inviting people to go see America. And it shows various crisscross paths. And then it shows highlights from a lot of famous places. It has Mount Rushmore, it has the Tetons, Taos, Monterey, Catalina Island. It's got Bryce Canyon here. We took the children one time on a road trip to Bryce Canyon, and actually that same road trip we went to Grand Canyon, and all of us at the end of it decided that we liked Bryce Canyon the best because of how accessible it is. In the Grand Canyon, we felt that we would need 3 to 7 days to really make sense of it. Because it's so vast and so fantastic. But Bryce Canyon, we made it down, had nice lunch there at the bottom and out, and felt like we had really gotten familiar with Bryce Canyon just because it is so accessible. So it has a little travel guide, and I mean very detailed. Look at the details here on the map that are just all the different places that you could go and see. So it's like Life magazine saying, go see the Rockies, go see the Mississippi, go see all these monuments and places. And it's a wonderful look at the spirit of the age of, here is a visual look at your country and all the different places that are options for you, no matter where you live in the States. I just love that. Now, this looks very iconic to me. USA Goes Mobil Gas. It's America's most popular gasoline. It shows this gas man shaking hands with Uncle Sam. It just looks very lovely and beautiful. I feel like you could frame this and put it up on your wall if you had a man cave or something, and just be fantastic. The color is so beautiful. So this article is all about, and it literally goes on and on and on. It shows the Yosemite Fall waterfall drop, that famous look there. So really just a lovely look at America here in the middle of this printing, which, this is Sunset Beach at Oregon. You guys, I have a friend who got married on this beach, and her photos are glorious. The beach is just as it shows here, where there's a long space that just kind of stays glassy from the water. And she actually has a photo that won awards because of her reflection there in the sand. It's just an amazing place, kind of otherworldly beach. We have an advertisement for whiskeys that is also just really iconic and beautiful. It's just a lovely ad. You look at the background of blue versus the orange whiskey. It's very well thought through and lovely. I feel like at the time when print media was the focus, they did a better job with it than we do now. I think they were more aware of what was visually pleasing. Well, here is someone that we have read about in this book. William Randolph Hearst. It says, William Randolph Hearst met new daughter-in-law Hope Chandler Hearst. Prettiest girl in paradise, she was named in life on December 20th, for the first time since her marriage to his son David in Baltimore on June 14th. Said he, a very, very lovely young lady. So this was not only the way to keep up with your travel plans or your election thoughts, but also society and what's going on. So very interesting. Then we go to an article that says life goes to a party with some anti-Roosevelt Wall Streeters. Founded in 1917, the Bond Club of New York is a social organization whose 650 members include partners, syndicate managers, and top-flight security salesmen connected with such famed financial houses as Morgan Stanley, Kidder, Peabody, Lee Higginson, Kuhn, Loeb, Seligman, Hayden, Stone, Dillon, Reed, etc. Hayden Stone, I believe, is the one that Kennedy was connected with at that time, but it shows various lawn games. One of them is a dart game that showed Lady Luck, and you can see what the balloons were and what you got to see and behind when you popped them. There's an accordion player. And it says the Bond Club Stock Exchange enabled members to trade for prizes, which included 3 brand new cars and $1,000 in stock. So very interesting. Editor of the Sober Wall Street Journal is the genial, capable Kenneth C. Hoggett there. So it's showing different men so that people who read Life magazine could get to know the movers and shakers in society. It tells about their annual dues and says that, this is their get together. Another article that I'm just going to share, not because it has to do with Roosevelt, but it is so indicative of the era. Look at that top picture and I'll tell you the headline. It says, "Lost Forceps Found in Woman's Abdomen." In Kansas City on June 13th, the press was privileged to attend an operation on Mrs. Esther Cornett, who had been complaining of a queer feeling since undergoing an appendectomy 3 years before. Surgeons removed the cause, a pair of forceps, left inside her after the first operation. It says the operation required removal of a foot of intestines into which the forceps had been wedged. Mrs. Cornett happily was able to smile at her plight. Many courts blame such cases of misplaced surgical instruments not on surgeons, but on assisting nurses. I know at some point the practice began of counting every single instrument before and after an operation because of situations like this. At the end of this magazine, we get the first bale of cotton from 1938. It says Francisco P. Lozano, whose farm is at La Grulla in Starr County, Texas, is only a few hundred yards north of the Rio Grande, produced the world's first bale of 1938 cotton. His 50-acre field had been stripped of open cotton from May 23rd to May 31st to get enough seed cotton to gin the first bale. Lozano had previously produced the world's first bale in 34 and 37 and is the first farmer ever to produce the first bale 2 successive years. So it's just interesting, the things that were being publicized. And of course, we end with an advertisement for gin, which is just appropriate. In the 60s and 70s, they moved to cigarettes, but clearly at this point, post-prohibition, the gin and whiskey ads carry the day. Oh, we do get a cigarette ad. Look at that Lucky Strike there on the back. So that is the look at FDR's America, what our people were like, what America was like, and what his election fortunes were like in 1938. So I hope you enjoyed this little look at this beautiful magazine. I'm so thankful to own these. I mean, part of the joy of having this channel is just that I have reason to buy magazines like this and then get to share them with you all. So I hope you enjoyed this little look at 87 years ago, what Life magazine was telling us about our president and about our country. If you're interested in the book, I'd encourage you to go check it out, The Kennedy Men, 3 Generations of Sex, Scandal, and Secrets. Now, if you're not familiar with this style of read aloud, it is very much like a summer reading club where we are walking through a book of stories about the Kennedys. And we have started out with stories about Joe Kennedy. It's been fascinating, you guys. I'm loving it. We're getting to look at Joe and Rose's marriage, how Joe made his money, the example he set by entertaining his mistresses in front of his wife and family, and the fallout from that into the lives of Joe, Jack, Bobby, and Ted, as well as the women in their lives, including their own sisters. So it's a fascinating look. We're going to get into the presidency of JFK. Of course, we're going to get into Kennedy tragedies. And one of the things I want you guys to hear from me is that I am not all about the tawdry details. This is not like a seedy detail kind of look at this book. There are some of those included in the book, and I just don't read them. But what it is to get a broad look at the Kennedy family, the influences that were there from the very beginnings with Joe and Rose, and then to trace the threads of how they got their foreign policy experience, how they got their views about women, how they dealt with scandal, how they looked inward for strength and competitively. Lots of big picture questions are answered by a kind of conversational look like this. So I hope you'll join us for that, because I'm loving the book, you guys, and I can't wait to go through more of it with you. If you haven't been watching, we're just a few episodes in, so you have plenty of time to catch up and come along on this journey with us this summer for the summer read, The Kennedy Men, 3 Generations of Sex, Scandal, and Secrets by Nellie Bly. So I hope you'll join me for that, and I hope you have a great day. We'll see you soon.